Should voting be mandatory in Canada?
Yes, voting should be mandatory for everybody in Canada. That would ensure adequate participation in our democracy. It's a citizen responsibility to go vote.
I don't think it should be mandatory. I think that we should encourage it as much as possible, but can't force anybody to do it.
Yes, I think that if it's not going to be mandatory, there should be more incentives maybe to vote. I think that the voter turnout, especially for municipal elections, is really low. We just had one here. The voter turnout's not high enough, so it would be nice to see some sort of incentive if it's not exactly mandatory.
No, I don't think voting should be mandatory in Canada. It's your democratic right if you choose to do it, but if you choose not to, that's also within your prerogative.
Mandatory? No. I think everybody should have the right to abstain from voting if they'd like. But I'd like to see it encouraged more, specifically at the municipal elections and provincial, because for a lot of political advocacy groups, that's a big step forward, and that's where fights need to be fought. And I don't think there's a big enough push to get people out voting.
Yes, I believe so, because people fought for the right for us to vote, so we should respect that.
No.
Yeah, no.
Everybody should have the right to choose if they want to vote. I think, there could definitely be more education surrounding why it's a good idea to vote, because you're having your voice represented by the people that you elect, right? So I think that there could certainly be more education surrounding why you should vote.
Before I would say that we should force everybody who qualifies, I would say let's lower the voting age. 18, maybe even 16.
It would help give the governments a bit of a better mandate, security in their mandate, what to do. But should it be obligatory? I would say no.
That's an interesting question. That's something I have never really thought of. I've always considered it mandatory personally. I've voted in every election since I became the age majority, and I plan on voting in every one, going forward. As to whether it should be mandatory or not, I don't know. It would be an interesting experiment to make it mandatory for a bit. I'd be interested to see what happens.
I don't think it should be mandatory because I do agree that is something that people have the choice to do or not, but I personally believe everybody should vote anyways, but I don't think it should be forced upon people, no.
I read something about, was it Australia that has mandatory voting, I believe? Anyway, it's an interesting concept. I'm just not sure if the results from that would really make a difference. I mean, there are a large proportion of the population who don't really follow news. They don't really know what's going on around them. All they know is what they read on Facebook, which, as we all know, tends to be a load of crap. And so I'm not sure that mandatory voting rules would really help democracy. I think what democracy really needs is a stronger journalism.
They should have freedom to vote for sure, but they also, I think, they also should have freedom to decide if they don't want to vote. I think that's also a freedom for individuals.
So starting with your voting question, I also don't think you should make it mandatory. It's still a democracy, and if people don't feel like expressing themselves, it might be a message in itself. So forcing people to choose between a certain option might not be the right way to do it. So I still believe that not expressing yourself is a freedom of speech as well.
Well, it's your right to choose to or not to. I don't think that mandatory is acceptable, no.
Not voting is also a choice, and I think some people are just, that's it. I don't want to get involved. I don't feel compelled to vote. I feel that all these options are not really options. I think that's what a lot of people feel sometimes, and not voting is in a way to express your displeasure with kind of not a whole lot of alternative.
I don't think you can ever make voting mandatory. I think you can definitely encourage, and I think we can put funds into educating and encouraging people to vote because it is important. But I think people also have the freedom to not vote, right? Sometimes there's two parties or people that you don't believe in, so you don't want to cast your vote. So I don't think it should be mandatory, but we should highly encourage it.
I'd like to think it would be. On the one hand, making something mandatory, not voting is a choice. That is a vote. So I don't think that it should be. Yeah, I'd like to think that it should be, but I think that in itself is problematic.